Starting with the box squat, you should have your feet at hip width apart and you should be sitting on the box. During the lowering phase, your hips and knees travel through flexion. The primary muscle mover for your hips are your gluteus maximus and your hamstrings. For the lowering is your quadriceps. During the lifting phase, hips and knees go through extension. The primary muscle movers for this are your gluteus maximus, hamstrings, and quadriceps. During the lowering phase, it is eccentric, you should be inhaling, and on the lifting phase, concentric, you should be exhaling. This exercise is dynamic constant, it's a push, multi-joint, closed chain, structural, and bilateral. The box squat is a lower body exercise. For the front squat, your feet should be hip width apart and your spine should be neutral with a tight core. Your hips and knees go through flexion. The primary muscle movers for your hips are your gluteus maximus and your hamstring, and for your knees, it is your quadriceps. For the lifting phase, your hips and knees go through extension. The same primary muscle movers apply that did for flexion. On the way down, you are eccentrically inhaling, and on the way up, you should be concentrically inhaling. This is a dynamic constant, push, multi-joint, closed range, and structural movement. For a back squat, your feet should be hip width apart and your core should be tight, keeping your spine neutral throughout the movement. On the lowering phase, your hips and knees go through flexion. On the way up, your hips and knees go through extension. Primary muscle movers for your hips are your gluteus maximus and your hamstrings, and for your knees is your quadriceps. On the way down is eccentric, you should be inhaling. On the way up is concentric, you should be exhaling. This is a dynamic constant, a push, multi-joint, closed chain, structural, and bilateral movement. For the dumbbell press during the lowering phase, your shoulder joint will be going through horizontal adduction, your shoulder girdle will be retracting, and your elbow joint will be going through flexion. On the lifting phase, all your joints just do the opposite as follows: shoulder joint, horizontal adduction, shoulder girdle, protraction, elbow joint extension. The primary muscle mover for your shoulder joint is your pectoralis major on the lifting and the lowering. For your shoulder girdle is your serratus anterior and your pectoralis minor. And for the elbow joint, it will be your tricep. On the eccentric, as in lowering, you should be inhaling. On the lifting, concentric, you should be exhaling. This is a dynamic constant, multi-joint, open chains, non-structural movement. For the bench press, you should have 3 points of contact on the bench with your feet in front of the bench. During the lowering phase, your shoulder joint will be going through horizontal abduction. On the lowering phase, your shoulder girdle will be going through retraction, and your elbow joint will be going through flexion. On the lifting phase, your shoulder joint will be going through horizontal adduction, your shoulder girdle protracting, and your elbow joint extension. The primary muscle mover for your shoulder joint is your pectoralis major. For your shoulder girdle, it's your serratus anterior and your pectoralis minor, and for your elbow joint is your tricep brachii. During the lowering phase, it is eccentric and you should be inhaling. During the lifting phase, it is concentric, you should be exhaling. This is a dynamic constant, push, multi-joint, open chains, non-structural, bilateral movement.
Exercise, you want your feet slightly wider than hip width and you want it underneath the bar. You want your back slightly bent and neutral while you lift on the concentric phase and you exhale, and you lower on the eccentric phase while you inhale. On the one arm barbell row, you want to make sure your knees are right underneath your hips, and you want to make sure your back is straight, and you want to lift on the concentric phase while exhaling and lower on the eccentric. For the chin-up exercise, you want your palms supinated and you want your arm shoulder width while you lift on the concentric phase while exhaling, and you lower on the eccentric phase while you inhale. For the pull-up exercise, you want a wide grip with your palms pronated. You want to lift on the concentric phase while exhaling and lower on the eccentric phase while you inhale. To perform the bent over roll exercise, you want your feet a little bit wider than hip width, and you want your back slightly bent and neutral. You want to lift the weight on the concentric phase while you exhale, and you want to lower the weight on the eccentric phase while you inhale.